So, last week, we were talking about the Women's March, and we came to an abrupt standstill and decided to put a pin in it. I believe where we ended was, I said women's rights aren't under attack in the United States, or I guess more clearly that they're not unequal in the United States. And then Dan said, wrong.
I didn't say wrong. But
you said, I disagree, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we just stopped. So we have had the week to come up with our own arguments here, and this is the epitome of what we are not supposed to do as straight white men.
Absolutely
is
not.
Talk about women's rights in America, but we will use the statistics, and if you have a problem with our ideas, not our identity, our ideas, attack us on those. That is the fairest thing to do.
Agreed.
What's your take on this?
Okay, so last week you said that legally and constitutionally women are equal to men.
Yes.
And I said to a point that I agree, but then I did some research.
Oh, okay.
So let's talk about that research.
Please.
Now, I'm going to get into a lot of social bias stuff, but I'm going to save that for after the constitutional stuff. So when it comes to the Constitution, have you ever heard of the Equal Rights Amendment?
I have.
So that's been that was written in 1923. It's been it's been rewritten a couple times, and it has been introduced into every session of Congress since 1982, and it's yet to be passed. It actually did almost pass in, what was it? I think 1970. Yeah, 1971. And 35 of the necessary 38 states ratified it, so it didn't get into the Constitution. Basically, the Equal Rights Act.
Yeah, what is it trying to do specifically?
The 14th Amendment is the Civil Rights, basically, Act. And that makes it so that it makes it unconstitutional to discriminate based on race, religion, or I have it written down here. There was a third one.
Gender?
No, actually, race, religion, and national origin. Okay. Now, for a long time, there's been a precedent that you basically use the 14th Amendment to talk about sex discrimination cases in court. In 2011, Justice Scalia, who just passed away, and that's, there was a big debate over filling his position and stuff like that, he stated that the Constitution does not protect against sex discrimination. Basically, the 14th Amendment isn't enough. Mm-hmm. So the Equal Rights Amendment would be put in place into the Constitution so that there was no debate about whether sex discrimination was unconstitutional.
Right. In which scenarios is this addressing? Is this addressing in federal jobs, or when would a person be allowed to cite this Equal Rights Amendment?
So basically, what you had said before, how or maybe this was in a private conversation before, you said that the Constitution basically protects the rights that were given to us, just
right.
By nature, if you will.
Right. It does not endow rights, it protects rights.
Right. And judges, they use the Constitution to defend or to rule on people, right?
Okay, so my thing is, if this is a matter of constitutional semantics, then it should be written in.
But it wasn't. So why?
I don't know.
Since 1923. I mean, back then I know why.
I do not know. But I do know that there are laws on the books in actual workplaces where it is actually illegal to discriminate.
Sure.
And private businesses cannot discriminate against having any type of person in their establishment. There is no real, material, pragmatic way that it is legal to discriminate against anybody in this country.
Right. There's like you said, there's a
This is a symbolic thing, and if that's what it is, then I'm on board. Why hasn't it been passed? If Justice Scalia, the conservative Supreme Court official that the left hates so much, has said, why isn't this in here? Then I'm obliged to agree.
Right.
And I don't know why they would ratify it in the first place. I'm sure they're just scared it's going to turn into some sort of overreach of the government to give women some sort of affirmative action.
Yeah. On its face, it seems like more of a women versus men thing, but in the actual wording of the act, it's more of an equal rights no matter what. You know what I mean? It's it's the last say. So the 14th Amendment protects against religion, race, and national origin discrimination. Equal rights, its most obvious issue would be sex discrimination, but it basically protects against anything. So why hasn't it been passed? That's kind of what my thing is. So before I agreed, constitutionally, yes, and that's because they were using the 14th Amendment,
right?
By extension, based on their judgely knowledge to use it to rule against sexual discrimination.
I have not looked into, specifically, in depth at least, this amendment, mainly because I know that that doesn't mean it's now legal.
Of course.
To discriminate.
Yeah.
But, why wouldn't be, the only thing I could conceive is, like I said in this intro, I'm not here representing a strictly conservative side. We're going on this issue by issue to try to pinpoint where we land individually, and hopefully can convince other people to do the same. So I don't know exactly why it hasn't passed. I could conjecture that it has to be for fear of some sort of government overreach, because that's always the fear on the right side of the aisle.
Is it government overreach if you're protecting the rights of others?
No.
I would say no.
It's government overreach if you cite protecting the rights of others to take away more rights from those you think are oppressing the others. It doesn't
say anything about free speech, though. I don't think it's...
it's
negating the rights of anyone?
It is government overreach to force a baker to bake a cake because you're protecting the rights of somebody else by infringing on now his rights. His rights
you're
to
referencing,
making that choice.
Like, if he didn't want to bake a cake for, say, a gay couple.
Wedding. Right.
Now, if you made that illegal, you're infringing on the baker's rights to cook cakes or bake cakes for who he wants.
Right.
Because he runs a business, he can make that decision for himself. Bad for business? Sure. But he has the right to do it.
Right, and ideally, if that's not the marketplace we want, nobody would go to that place anymore.
Right.
I mean, if we have a mutual friend, if he was getting married and a baker said, dude, I'm not baking your cake, I'm sorry, this just goes against my religious beliefs, and there's a nice baker down the road. Even if they were polite about it, I'd be like, yeah, I'm still not going to go there.
Right.
And I mean, you're engaged. I would tell you not to go there.
I would not go there, yeah. And
that's how the marketplace works. But the point is, when you protect religious freedom under the Constitution, and him baking this cake is literally him participating in a ceremony that goes against his religious beliefs, and now you're saying it's illegal to do that, you have to serve them now. I'm forcing you via government gun to do this.
Right.
That is government overreach in the name of protecting somebody's rights when actually you're infringing on the rights of somebody else. Is that a good reason not to pass this? I don't think so, because quite clearly it seems to me a symbol like, dude, why hasn't this passed?
Right. All people should be equal under the Constitution.
Yes.
When being ruled
pragmatically, which is my argument from the beginning, they are. The laws say that they are. But this amendment would put a nice firm stamp on that. And you have me on that one.
My argument basically is...
why wouldn't it sign except for sexism?
Exactly.
Is your implicit
social
argument.
bias, yeah.
Social bias.
Would you like to say anything about that or take it to a new... because I have a lot of other information, but I wanted to give you a chance to bring something up.
No, I'll ask you, what social bias?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Nick. I am very glad you asked. Okay, so... you guys are going to be graced with many graphs and pie charts here. It's going to be fun.
Just data dump me, sir.
Okay, so, you know what? Let's start with this, because I think we could fight about this a little bit.
Please.
Pay gap.
What do you want me to say?
Wage gap.
Yeah, I know what you want me to say, and I'm not gonna bless you with those particular words that you want me to say.
Now listen to me, because I think I'm going to surprise you here.
Well, let me just say this first.
Okay,
then.
Go ahead.
The wage gap is real, but it does not mean what it is supposed to mean. It does not mean what everybody says it means. And I will quote a woman here,
sure,
writing in Forbes magazine, quote, "The White House and others who promote," she calls it a myth, it's real, but the myth of different pay for equal work.
Right.
"The White House and others who promote the myth are manipulating statistics in a way to convince women that they are the victims of systematical societal discrimination and, therefore, stand to benefit from further government action." Now, here's what it actually shows. The official Bureau of Labor Department statistics show that the median earnings of full-time female workers is 77% of the median earnings of full-time male workers. That's the number we get.
Sure.
77% of the
dollar.
That's
statistically accurate.
But that is very different than, quote, 70 cents on the dollar for doing the same work as men.
I agree.
We talked about this probably last week. This was off the podcast. But I told you about a thought I had where the only way that you could even get this information to say that women are paid less for the same work is you have to send a form to every single company in America describing every single position, who's in it, how long they've been in it, what their qualifications are, what they've contributed to the company, and then match up two people, man and woman, who have the same exact credentials and have been there the same exact amount of time, and then compare their earnings. This did not happen.
Nope.
It will not happen. We do not have that type of systematic survey in place. You have aggregated medium incomes of full-time women versus full-time men, and when you add it up, 77 cents on the dollar has nothing to do with the same work, and I'm tired of that myth being spread around.
Something I saw was when they reference full-time, they actually include different hours that could be full-time.
Right, full-time starts at 35.
So it could be anywhere from 35, 40.
Men statistically work more hours because statistically women are mothers, so that's just how it happens to be. Sure. And you could be comparing somebody who's working 40 hours to somebody who's working 35 hours. You're
exactly.
Right. It's another variable.
Yeah. So another thing, and I actually agreed with you there. When you look, there was actually a study done when if you put in as many controls as you possibly can, like women pausing a promotion, say, to have a family, or basically what the study said was it all comes down to individual choice.
Yes.
And it closes that gap to the point of a couple cents. And it can be reasonably said that those couple cents are a rounding error.
Could be a rounding error, and this is to say, because I have to say this multiple times in order for my points to be taken seriously, is that I'm not denying any sort of sexism at all.
Sure.
I'm not denying that.
We're going to talk about that quite a bit, I think.
Not denying that sexism exists, but that's not the argument that sexism exists.
Not.
The argument is that it's a systematic discrimination where women pay 30-cent tax on their paycheck because they're a woman.
Right.
Makes no sense. Not to mention, if companies did do this, everybody would hire women because they would know they could pay them less.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. That does not happen.
So I ascribe to the point that rounding error isn't a rounding error because I think social biases do preclude women from earning as much as a man with the same qualifications, with the same amount of hours worked, etc., etc.
What if more women choose lower paying occupations?
Well, all right, so that's what I want to get into. And actually, I want to throw up a little bar graph here that actually supports your point.
Right.
It's basically...
And I might add, it will never be perfectly even and
right. It could go the other way for a bit. Yeah, it could fluctuate.
I mean, I just want to throw this at you, that in 147 out of the 150 most populated cities in the United States, women make 8% more than men when they're unmarried and single and have the same amount of education.
Right.
147 out of 150 most populated cities, and in cities like Atlanta and like New York, it's like 15% more.
Wow. These
are just facts. Do I think New York is sexist against men? I do not.
Right.
When you take into account various factors, the stats add up. Just because the stats aren't equal does not mean that an injustice has been done.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, that's a statistical, 8%. I didn't know that.
I mean, that study was done probably, I think, in like 2010.
Okay,
so that's like 7 years ago.
Yeah,
but still a modern study. Yeah, the guy shared it with like Time Magazine and whatnot.
Yeah,
and nobody has come forth since questioning the guy's methods. I don't know exactly what the stats are today, but those were the stats then. And, it's just contrary to the narrative that is often passed around.
Sure. So the one thing I wanted to say to support your point was basically that on the whole, mothers experience more career interruptions than fathers do. Things like reduced work hours, take significant time off, to take care of a child. But I do believe that there is social bias toward men. And the reason is because if you look at the cabinet, say, and this is a good way to do it because underrepresentation is a big deal. Basically, that's the idea that your government can't represent you because of who you are. We're both straight white males. We're pretty well represented in Congress and the White House, wouldn't you say?
I would 100% agree.
So, if you look at basically the different administrations of the past 6 presidents, you can see a clear trend toward more women and less white men. And you could have probably guessed it, when it came to Trump, it kind of went backward. It almost seems like you brought it back to the 50s.
What are the stats?
So, white men make up 75% of his cabinet, Trump's cabinet.
Oh, okay, yeah, cabinet, okay, that's right.
And I think it's 20% are women.
Okay, that makes sense, just because that's obviously who he was hanging out with.
Sure.
He is clearly not picking with any sort of regard to actively adding diversity in any particular sense.
He wasn't trying to.
He was not. That's my point. He wasn't trying to. Do I think that that's sexist though? You'd have to get in Trump's brain to decide whether.
I don't want to be there, so.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought you said like Congress, not the cabinet. But I know for a fact there are hundreds of women in Congress, or at least over 100.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the House makes up. I think the House is almost 500 people, and of course the Senate's 100. Mm-hmm. So we actually have some graphs on that as well.
Yes.
About 80% of both the House and Senate are male.
So should that be fixed? Yes, but I mean, who's voting for these people?
The American people. So couldn't you say the social bias stems from us?
It just might. Or how many men are running versus women are running. I think in our local township.
Yeah, you're right. You should look at that as well.
Just the other month, there were 2 dudes on the ticket.
Yeah.
There was no option.
Yeah.
I mean, school boards, there's always an option for whatever reason, but that's something you have to delve into the data. Is it due 100% to bias? That it would surprise me. It would surprise me if people looked at the ticket and just said no to all women. It would surprise me if that was the majority, and I don't think it is.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure that's a sign of oppression of women in the first place.
Right. Now, I agree. You're right. If you don't have a choice of who to vote for your representative, if it's a man and a man's going to get in. You know? That's just how it is.
Like this is obviously anecdotal. I probably can name off the bat 3 or 4 friends of ours that are in either economics or political science, and none of them are girls.
Yeah, okay. That's not a big sample size.
No. Like I said, I'm prefacing that with that it is anecdotal evidence, and we would need to look into that data.
I mean, that's STEM as well.
Right, but the point is, I mean, 55% of all college students are women, and 58% of all graduate students are women.
Okay.
That's 11.7 million versus 8.8 million.
For males?
Yeah,
okay.
Females to males. There's the oppression, the systematic oppression that is trying to be forced as a narrative isn't, to me, backed up by those numbers. Do I wish there were more women in Congress? Yes.
Right.
But you can't force them to go into that field in the first place.
Agreed.
And I would need to see, before I speak any further, I would need to see the actual statistics on how many ran and what was their platform, and were they Democrats in a Republican side, or are they Republicans in a Democrat?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables.
Right.
So I have a couple of, I mean, when it comes to executive positions, there's definitely more males on boards and in certain executive positions.
Right.
In the business sector, if you will. 70% of board members are women. And 5% of CEOs in this nation. And they only comprise 30% of the workforce of the largest tech companies, which is actually funny. The school I go to is an engineering school, and they had about 30% women. So it seems like across the board, STEM is about a third when it comes to women.
Now, what is that indicative of, though? My school, it was third in chemical engineering in the country. And my buddy Andy, who was in that program, there was about a girl or 2 in every class.
Okay, yeah. I had the same experience, yeah.
Right. Does that mean that all the other girls were forced not to go into that field? Do you think that these women are making decisions that aren't of their own free will? Are they not following their interests? Or is there just a relative trend that girls in general, they have the freedom to go into these fields, and many are, but in general, as a group, that just doesn't seem to be what they're interested in? Is that possible?
No, it is possible, because if you look at jobs like speech pathology, the demographics switch.
Right.
And it's actually a large minority male.
There was an article in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. This guy surveyed 55 different nations and differences in personality when comparing, the different sexes and whatnot.
Okay.
And what he found was that the differences in personality when comparing the 2 groups, men and women, the differences are the largest and most robust in the most prosperous and free societies. Quote, sex differences in personality traits are larger in prosperous, healthy, and egalitarian cultures in which women have more opportunities equal with those of men. Is it possible that these trends, the trends of the feminine and the masculine, what broadly the different groups are attracted to career-wise, that we more comfortably click into those trends when we have more freedom to do so.
Yeah, I think I could jive with that.
I just simply laying down flatly that this is due to bias in general or sexism in general. One, I don't think accomplishes anything and might even make things worse.
Yeah.
And two, there's no evidence. It's just you can think it, but there's no hard evidence.
Okay. I mean, I can't exactly argue with you because I think you're right. I think you said this last week. Take a woman and a man, the same education qualifications. They both have the same chances. My argument is that even though they have the same chances, a woman is more likely to face adversity than a man. You know what I mean?
Well, what type? I mean, there are sexists out there.
Yeah, I think there's more.
And the sexists aren't sexist against men unless you count the brand new type of feminism that is slowly bleeding on the timeline.
Yeah, and I agree with you there.
That's not the tradition. No,
which
it's not.
Group is larger though? The male sexists or the female opposite sexist towards male?
The female one's growing, but no, it's no question.
Right. So isn't that a widespread national problem? There's a lot of old men who grew up in a time where you could slap a girl's ass in the office and not get fired. I mean, we're a nation built on men being breadwinners and women being housewives. That happened. We can't take away history.
No one wants to take away history. And I'm not even saying that they have been on this level of equality for very long. But within the last 10 years, 15 years, the plateau is here. It has happened.
Oh, we're definitely looking up at it. I think we're looking up at it, though. The remnants of that society still exist. Do you disagree?
You'd have to tell me what you're talking about.
I just mean, in general, I think women are looked as lesser than men in the eyes of a large portion of the population that cannot, it can't be ignored. It can't be oh, they're just sexist. You know what I mean? It starts to affect other things.
I don't think I can agree with that in general. I think a vast minority of people are sexist, and those people do not have power over the freedom of women in America to make the choices that they want to make.
Okay, what about this? So this is a pretty specific example. We'll throw out the graph, but basically, an organization called Scientific American.
Yeah, I know that.
They did a study. Would you call them? They're not crazy, right?
I don't think so. They're definitely liberal leaning, but that's fine. This is what we're doing.
Okay, so they what they did was they printed up a sample of, I think, 120 resumes, okay?
Okay. I actually think I know where you're going with this, and I'm probably going to have a hard time defending it. Go.
So, and again, you have to take this with a grain of salt because it's one study, one example. There's 320 million people in this country, But still, it's important. Mm-hmm. They printed up 120 resumes, the same exact qualifications. 50% of the resumes they put male names on, and 50% of the resumes they put female names on. And they sent them out to companies to be evaluated and they basically got a starting salary. They got an offer.
Yeah.
So there's two graphs that are pretty important here. Basically, these companies rated the competence, hireability, and I have to read this quick one. The mentoring of the male applicants higher across the board than the female applicants. And
there was no interview process though, was there?
I believe it was just because then you get your face to face, that could. So that is this is also important to keep in mind. This is just a resume. So it's either male or female.
This is completely beside the point. I just personal experience didn't know you could get an offer right off the bat from sending in a resume.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe they did go on an interview. Actually, I don't know. I'd have to look more into that.
I'm the skeptic here, man.
I hear you. We'll link the study, and then people can look into it, and even we should look into it more. So the nail in the coffin, if you will, of the study is basically a single graph with two bars on it. On average, the male applicants received slightly over $30,000. It was a lab assistant.
Yeah.
It was entry level. $30,000 starting salary. The women, on average, got about $26,500. There's a clear difference there.
My question is,
what other reason is there except that they were female?
My question
Same qualifications.
Well, I guess this would be more on your point. Is why would these companies want to lose money?
But why are they willing to pay the men more. This was 50-50, you know?
Yeah. I can't speak to what those companies were doing. If the only thing you can do is if they hired one of each or clear discrimination is shown, then what they are doing is illegal. You can't discriminate based on sex alone. And if that's the only remaining factor...
Apparently it was, in this study at least.
And if this was real, then what they're doing is actually illegal.
Right. But apparently nothing's being done.
Then that should be cracked down on.
Well, that's my argument. I'm saying that there is something in this nation that is causing this, and you're disagreeing with that. Of course there should be something done about it. We are not arguing about that.
Right.
I'm saying there's a clear reason that this study exists and why this graph looks like the way it does. You know what I mean? Is my argument correct? Are these the reasons? Is social bias the reasons? Is the fact that we're built on this male-dominated culture the reason? I don't know, but it exists, at least in some places, and it's a problem. So to definitively say that men and women have equal rights in this country, I think, is a falsehood.
Well, jumping to equal rights, no, I don't think you can say that.
Equal, what's the better word then? Equal treatment? I don't know.
Equal opportunity across the board, perhaps. I mean, there's also, I'm sure, tons of occupations where the preference is female, and I don't even think that's arguable.
No, I mean genetically.
Can you as a male with a beard right now try to get a babysitting job? I think you're gonna have a hard time. I really do.
You're right.
And is that excusing this behavior? What was it, like a lab assistant, something like that?
Yeah.
It has been a male-dominated field. I'm sure that is the bias is there, and maybe in Hollywood it's the same thing. Those people are, especially in Hollywood's like the best example because that's actually equal work. I mean, if you want to get down to try counting the words in the script, then obviously every role is different. There are major roles and minor roles, but there's a disparity there that like can't be ignored.
Yeah.
But the truth is that there are benefits and burdens for both sexes. Okay,
I can agree with that.
30% of men versus 15% of women will face violent crime on a college campus. That's double the chance. Okay. 78% of murder victims are men. 78% of suicide victims are men. 93% of federal prisoners are men. When two people are charged for the same crime and have similar backgrounds, of similar criminal histories, men and women, men get 60% longer sentences.
Really?
Statistical fact. 60% of the homeless are male, and 85% of active soldiers are male. This is the society we live in. There are benefits and burdens on both sides. Are there problems on both sides? Yes. Is there systemic sexism specifically targeting women and pushing them down in America? I would say not. The most lethal jobs in America are all men. Women can go there if they want. I don't think that they're being forced not to. I think they're choosing not to.
I mean, we talked about that in the wage gap discussion, that it comes down to individual choices. It does. Now, everything you said was a fact, so I can't disagree with you. You know, so I will cede that. Yeah, there are, like, how was the way you said it? There's pros and cons, if you will.
Pros and cons, benefits and burdens.
Yeah, I like benefits and burdens better. I don't know, man. Look, we both have numbers and facts that support both sides, you know what I mean?
That's the point, and the point is also that there is never a clear narrative, and that any clear narrative should be questioned by anybody listening to it. Because the second you try to conform facts to a narrative is when you start fueling your own ideology versus actually trying to find the truth. Is there sexism? Yes. Never argued it. Is it societal, systemic, and causing an actual oppression of women today? No. They're free. They're free to make the choices they want. Nobody's forcing them to do anything. That's my argument.
That's your opinion. Argument. That's your argument. Not opinion, because you have facts to back it up.
Yeah. It's an argument. And I think telling at least young girls that all of society is against them from a young age, and then deciding later on that becoming a mom is like the worst thing you can do because you're taking for granted all the progress of women. You're creating a climate that is just not good for women growing up.
I agree with that.
Why would you want to tell your daughter that society is against her and crashing down on her when I've just explained, one, the stats don't back that up. It's just something that feels like, I don't want it to be true, but it also kind of feels right at the same time. And like, it's like a warm, sad belief. And you want to believe it, but if you actually delve into the information on a systematic level, like, it doesn't exist. And trying to tell, young people growing up that it exists and that they're being pushed down by an invisible force, so to speak, is going to lead to nothing but a lack of personal responsibility when they fail.
It's they push the blame to others.
Right. And this is a sentiment I've been seeing a lot, especially on, the wicked Facebook, is women who revert to, I don't even want to say revert, because it's just a choice. It's just an individual choice.
Yeah.
Women who take on those traditional gender roles are legitimately actually being attacked now. Because, like...
Oh, sure. Like, if you choose to be a mother...
There's just disrespect now for housewives and moms.
But if you choose to be one, what's the problem?
Exactly.
There's stay-at-home dads, too.
Right. Those are not feminists. Those are just judgmental people,
I agree.
in my mind.
I agree.
How many latchkey kids were stoked that their mom was, like, never home,
Right.
I mean, we want to say you can have it all. The truth is, if you're in a couple, then you're going to have kids. No, both of you aren't going to have it all. And that's a discussion for you as the individual couple to make.
Sure, yeah.
But to talk down to moms and housewives, that's a form of sexism in itself.
I can absolutely get on board with that, 100%. Because if it really is their choice, then, you know what I mean? Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said, but there's still... I mean, which gender is more... suffers from domestic violence? You know what I mean? Women, of course. I mean, it's statistic, just like yours were.
Yeah.
And then, all right. Well, I want to bring this up as well.
Please.
Because we're kind of at a stalemate there. I agree with your points. I just think that something still exists that we should eradicate.
You think there is a broader trend, and I do not. I think there are isolated incidents, but I do not think it is an overwhelming pattern of systemic oppression.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. You know what? I can even agree with that. You're like overwhelming systemic oppression. You're saying that it doesn't exist.
No.
Okay. I think to a point I can also agree with you there, but I think there's like an air of it, if you will, like remnants of it.
I mean, if that's true, how are the majority of college graduates women? How are the majority of graduate students women? How are women making 8% more in 147 out of the 150 largest cities in America? Well, how is that happening if there is systematic oppression?
Yeah.
These are the questions I ask.
No, I hear you. I honestly, I wish I had an answer that could like stomp your argument into the ground, but I don't, and I'm able to say that to you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Is anybody? I mean, I won't say is anybody because there will be those few people that we don't like, but on the whole, people aren't proud of that aspect of American history.
Sure, absolutely.
When you're forced to do something, no matter what it is, even if it's being a housewife or a mom, which many people choose to do today and is perfectly fine and love it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But when that is something you have to do, then it's wrong. When
society tells you that's what you have to do, it's wrong. Yeah.
Right. But that's not what's happening today. If
I agree.
anything, I have not, when you turn on the TV, when you go on the internet, show me commercials and whatnot that say women need to stay at home and have kids. You won't. You can't.
Right.
I think a couple months ago, Google even had a thing where it was inviting little girls to join like a coding program or whatever. Yeah. Boys weren't even allowed.
I hear you. Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
If they are being socially pushed down in the way that is being described, why is all this stuff showing the complete opposite? The only way they're being pushed down is because everybody is telling them they're being pushed down.
Because of some ill-perceived notion.
Right. And when you repeat something that much, it will become true.
Yeah. All right, so that was talking more about like the social aspects, right? And kind of like jobs and
right.
Okay. Roe v. Wade, of course, very controversial.
Yes.
1973, basically forbid a state from outlawing or regulating any aspect of abortion performed during the first trimester of pregnancy, all right? And it expands to say, could only enact abortion regulations reasonably related to maternal health, the mother's health, in the second and third trimesters. So it actually breaks down the trimesters into what the state laws could do.
Okay.
And then it could enact abortion laws protecting the life of the fetus only in the third trimester. Because by then, morally, there's a lot of argument that it could feel pain. It has like a neural backbone, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty well documented. We all know about that. So one of the largest, I guess, issues, like we talked about with the Women's March, was reproductive rights.
Yes.
So recently, Ohio is trying to pass laws that sort of circumvent Roe v. Wade and try to push the boundary as much as they can up to the fence without actually going over it.
What are they trying to do?
So, basically, they're enacting laws that sort of make it harder or discourage abortion. Not that that's a bad thing, depending on who you ask. That don't necessarily go against Roe v. Wade. So, I'll just read them to you. It basically breaks down what it takes to get an abortion in Ohio, okay? Women must receive state-directed counseling to attempt to discourage her from getting the abortion. Then there's a mandatory 24-hour waiting period. So basically, you go in and they say, like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do it? And then they have to think on it for a day. Which, you know what? More thinking, not a bad thing. I'll play devil's advocate on that one. Health plans offered in the state's health exchange under ACA and to public employees can only cover abortion in cases when the woman's life is endangered, rape, or incest.
Well, we knew that. We talked about that last week.
We did. Medication abortion must be provided using FDA protocol. This prevents the use of a more common, simpler regimen that requires fewer visits.
I mean, it's the federal department. I mean, what do you want them to do?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I hear you. Like we said, that it's not covered. Federal funds don't cover abortions. The parent of a minor must consent before an abortion is provided. Basically, you gotta get.
So what if they're under 18? That's what
I would assume
that's
so.
What it
Yeah,
means by minor.
Yeah, because exactly. Only in cases of life endangerment, rape, or incest can public funds be used for an abortion. We already knew that. So now, while these don't go against Roe v. Wade, they're trying to I believe
pave the way.
They're pushing the boundaries. You know what I mean? They're taking these rights away from these women by sort of
So you think this is a form of oppression against women?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio is now the second most regulated state when it comes to abortion, Texas being the first. Of course, it's a conservative state.
So, one, abortion's not going to be illegal. It's still legal. They're pushing the boundaries. They're making it harder to get one.
Yeah.
But two, if I want to take the hardcore tack here.
Sure,
and
go ahead.
What needs to be realized is, I don't even think this is a debate about women's rights at all. This is a debate about the life of the baby inside the woman. And many people would argue reproductive rights does not include the right to kill a baby for convenience or any other reason besides those few exceptions.
Right, which we listed, yeah.
Right. But the other number, and this is a big number, is if you're going to try to paint this as a woman's right, why do 50% of women think abortion is wrong? Why do 50% of women think abortion should be illegal?
Right.
It is the whole point is this is a split issue for both men and women. It's about 50-50 on both sides. Mm-hmm. Where I don't even know if we ever can come to a clear-cut answer.
Right.
Because the left, the side that even I'm drawn to most of the time, will say this is about women's bodies. And the right will be like, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do with your body. But that baby is not your body.
Right.
It is in you. Mm-hmm. Unfortunate because you want to kill it now.
Right.
But it has nothing to do with you. It is a separate entity that has a heartbeat after 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's the argument.
That's their argument, yeah. And people say what about separation of church and state?
Yes.
But
what does that have to do
with
it?
That's what I'm getting at. It comes down to a moral obligation where, it's illegal to murder somebody. So they're actually relying on the Constitution to support them rather than, the Bible.
Right. The point is, this is a hardcore, deep-cutting, ethical, philosophical, and moral issue where, you bring it up anywhere. There's nobody wants to talk about it.
No.
But they will kind of secretly want to talk about it. And then when you do, you will never get one room of people that all agrees.
Right.
You can't and you won't because it is that...
Unless you purposely organize it.
Right. Exactly. It is a divisive topic, and when 50% of women, I mean, the women who weren't even invited to the Women's March,
right,
I might add, don't agree with this, that's not a woman's right. This is just a debate over that specific philosophical issue.
Okay.
And on top of it, it's not even being made illegal. They're just trying to tighten up restrictions, which I could argue you would expect from a Republican administration.
Yeah. So you don't think it infringes on any sort of women's right at all?
No. I would not use the word right. I would say those who believe it's wrong and those who believe it's right, and they would argue, and that would be the fight you will have over this particular topic.
Okay. So maybe it was ill choice for me to bring that up then. Maybe it doesn't apply. I
don't think so. I don't think it was an ill choice because this is the argument that many people will bring up.
Right.
And
that it is a woman's right to choose.
Right.
Rather than a law. You know what I mean?
There's a reason both sides phrase it the way they do. Pro-choice, pro-life. Do either of those sound negative to you?
No.
Of course, because both sides think they're right, but they're arguing from a specific ideological viewpoint.
Yeah.
And one is, why are you telling me what to do with my body? And the other is, you're killing a baby.
Right.
And just firing those two back and forth is never going to get anywhere.
You're going to hit each other in the middle of the wall every time.
Right.
You're not going to get the other side to ever relent.
No.
For example, I'm pro-choice, as anyone could probably imagine.
Mm-hmm.
If someone comes at me with pro-life arguments, maybe I'll change. I don't want to blockade my mind off of different viewpoints, but I can almost guarantee that I'm not going to change my mind based on what I already know.
The point is to be open.
Yeah.
But
I'm pro-choice because I don't care what other people do with, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm a man. And
yes.
like you said before, I recently got engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course...
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
In the middle of this very deep conversation.
Now, I know for a fact that if Jen and I got pregnant, that we would not terminate that pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a very stable relationship. I don't have a lot of money right now. I'm still a student. But we'd make it work, you know what I mean? Because personally, we believe that we would want to raise that child. You know what I mean?
Dude, you're going to make me tear up.
And that's our personal belief.
Yes.
But would I ever criticize or think that someone who wasn't ready for that, you know what I mean? That's why I'm pro-choice. I'm not pro-choice because I would want my fiancé to get an abortion. I'm pro-choice because anyone should be able to do what they want under the law. And under Roe v. Wade, they can get an abortion.
Yes. That is an articulate point. It's in the law. It's in the books. There are many people who would argue that it shouldn't even be in the books.
Absolutely. It's one of the most controversial rulings ever.
Yeah. I mean, I thought you were going to take a different tack with that and say you're a man, so you can't possibly argue about this, to which I would say either an idea is wrong or it is not, and it does not matter who is proposing that idea. But that's a whole separate thing.
All right.
Do I think is it a woman's issue? Yes, only women can get pregnant unless I don't even want to get into.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, right. But is it a woman's right? No.
Okay. I disagree, but we're not going to argue each other on that, honestly.
Right. I mean, we've already talked about what the angle is on each side. I mean, yeah, we don't even think we need to take it further than that.
No.
Is there anything else that we can combat over?
Yeah, I think there might be a couple other quick things if you're up for it.
Yeah, dude, let's run this out.
So I think we both have a little bit of research and information on these specific topics, so I think we might want to finish it out with that.
Yeah.
All right. Basically, rape culture and the new feminist movement. I knew you knew I was going to say that, but here we go.
You can't see me, folks, but I am smiling. And I feel bad because I don't think I've ever smiled at somebody saying rape culture before.
And you probably shouldn't, but I'm also smiling, so we're both implicit now.
Right. What do you got?
All right. So, first, I mean, I think the term rape culture is used a lot, so it would be good to get like an actual definition.
Okay.
Basically, rape culture is the sociological concept used to describe a setting, the setting in this case being the nation,
okay,
in which rape is pervasive and normalized.
Okay, do you believe this?
I don't think it's normalized. I mean...
That's good, because I have one question to ask you and anybody who thinks it's normalized. When you're talking about people who go to prison, who do the prisoners hate the most?
Yeah, sexual assault perpetrators.
And what is like it's the most hated crime.
Yeah, they get killed in prison for it.
Yeah, nobody, come on, normalized.
Right. Now, I have something to say to that, though, to that extent. So, normalized? No, of course it's not normal to rape someone else, male or female. There have been females who have raped men. It happens. Right. Of course, more females are raped, but it goes
without question.
Yeah, of course. Normalized? No, it's illegal. You go to prison if you rape someone. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's where I'll jump in and say the term rape culture is too big. It is just too big of a phrase because culture. There is a culture of rape now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
That too big of a word, and it seems to me like it was created that way on purpose.
Okay. So,
but I completely interrupted you.
No, it's fine. So, all right, fine. What about rape normalization? You want to call it that instead?
Because no, I don't even think it's normalized. I mean, you're gonna have me arguing that it doesn't exist either way. So I'll let you finish your thought.
I would say that there's something that smells like the normalization of rape. Okay. Now, and I mean, this is sort of cherry picking. I'll admit to it. But the case People vs. Turner, very controversial.
Dude. I'm gonna agree with you on this.
Yeah. So basically, most people
is a point.
Yeah, most people are informed, but basically, this college student forcefully inserted his fingers into an unconscious woman.
It's sickening.
He was indicted on rape of intoxicated person, rape of unconscious person, assault with intent to rape intoxicated woman, sexually penetrating intoxicated person with foreign object, and then the same but for unconscious person.
Yeah.
He was actually charged for 3. The 2 formal rape charges were dropped. But basically, he was looking at, 6 years in jail? I think the prosecutors wanted 6 years in jail. So then it dropped to 6 months. And then he actually only served 3 months in jail with, I think, 3 years of probation. Now, there are people who get caught with a dime bag of weed who are in prison for 14 years.
Yeah, weed should be legal in the first place. That's a different argument.
Yeah, we completely agree on that already. So to talk about it might not even be worth it, but stay tuned. Who knows? Now, 14 years, this, let's put it into like a more relatable, way.
It's a ridiculously long time.
A lot of people know people who smoke. Now, if they get caught with a dime bag of weed, they could be charged and sent to prison for 14 years.
I mean, that's the extreme case.
Absolutely, it's an extreme case, but it has happened.
I'm sure whoever got that sentence had priors.
Agreed. All right, fine, but let's just agree that it was probably more than 3 months.
The point is, yes, that is an obscene injustice. That dad's whole remarks about 2 minutes of action don't deserve 6 minutes. Yeah, they do if it's rape.
Right, absolutely.
You can call it a mistake, and do I, in my heart of hearts, think that this dude is evil? No. Do I think he regrets it? Yes.
Of course.
But the punishment has to be paid because that is the most intolerable offense. It is the top of the pecking order of things that we absolutely do not tolerate in this society. And the opposite of the lesson you're trying to tell everybody else is now being shown.
So do you think, now, of course, we don't like the term rape culture.
I will agree a bad case is a bad case. Do I think there is a rape culture? No.
Do you think that this lends a certain amount, even if it's small, lends a bit of credence to the notion of normalization of rape in this country?
I think that, well, first off, I just watched the People vs. OJ, so I'm like already hating on the justice system because that show is incredible. But take all these like true crime docs and then terrible cases like this where it seems like how is the system we have so broken in the first place?
Yeah.
How can something like this happen? And that's just because certain biases do come to fruition. The only thing I can say about this particular case is it's indicative of that judge's biases, in that this kid who smiled his way into court,
right,
and whose dad gave what I'm sure he believed to be a heart-wrenching story, somehow persuaded this guy. I don't think that's indicative of a larger cultural movement of rape. I mean, we already talked about how men and women with the same crimes and same criminal backgrounds, men will get 60% longer sentences. So these biases come out, but that doesn't mean that
it's like widespread.
There's societal oppression.
And I mean,
and I just want to get into some of these stats here.
Sure.
Because like the wage gap and like a bunch of other stuff we've talked about, there are myths and numbers that have been repeated so often
they've almost become
that
true. Right?
They're essentially true. And the number here is 1 in 4, 1 in 5 women are raped on college campuses.
Okay.
It is the most untrue thing.
Really?
And most ridiculous statistic I've ever actually delved into to try to find the origins of, because it makes no sense. And when you actually look at the federal statistics, which aren't close to perfect, obviously, but you get a much more real number. So the survey that they found this in is American Association of Universities survey, and they surveyed 27 colleges. And out of the 750,000 people they asked, only 150,000 answered. So about 20% answered the survey.
Okay.
And what they found was 23% of these women had, quote, unwanted sexual contact.
Okay.
So first off, you want to ask, well, there's a couple questions. One is, what does unwanted sexual contact mean? And the other is, what does only 20% answering your survey mean? So
probably a bad survey, right?
I'll go into that. The actual author of this survey wrote, an analysis of the possibility that the estimates were affected by non-response bias found that certain types of estimates may be too high because non-victims may have been less likely to participate. This makes sense. If you're a victim of sexual assault and the survey comes to you about sexual assault, you want to get the message out.
Right.
These people, it's a shame, obviously.
So you're saying statistically that more people who weren't sexually assaulted would opt out from taking the
survey,
which would
dude, if that survey came to me and I was busy with schoolwork,
right,
I'd be like, this isn't me.
Yep.
I mean, straight white male. That's gonna happen. Okay. But the point is, the author of the survey said this.
Right.
He said this. And then...
So he's basically saying take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, he's saying take it with a grain of salt.
Probably a pretty large grain.
Also, when talking about the results, and we're going to get to what unwanted sexual contact means.
Yeah.
But he also said, as the researchers who generated this report have repeatedly said, the 1 in 5 number is for, I don't know what IHE means, but I think it means the actual institution.
Okay, yep.
The 1 in 5 number is for a few IHEs and not representative of anything outside this frame. Why would you take such a small study and say this must be the national average?
I agree with that.
The results show that the rates vary greatly across institutions. And when you actually look at the Bureau of Justice estimates, which, like I said, they're not perfect, but about 1 in 53 women are raped in college. Still immensely too many.
Sure.
Am I saying, no.
Of course not.
Fix that. But 1 in 4...
When you say a quarter, that's,
Right. 1 in 4 is insane. And the reason they get this is because you can't just ask on a survey, were you raped?
Right.
Nobody will say yes. Statistically speaking, those surveys always get ridiculously low numbers. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask these vague questions.
Like unwanted sexual contact?
Unwanted, and obviously I'll throw up some of the actual questions, but there were questions like, has somebody rubbed up against you, unwanted kissing? All of this got thrown into the same thing, which then the press turned into sexual assault. They said 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted, and then people equate sexual assault with rape, and now think 1 in 4 women are raped on what is statistically the safest place for a woman to be in America, which is the college campus.
Right.
That's not rape culture. That's bad statistics being manipulated and spread.
Yeah, and not even by the author of the study.
No. He literally said, dude, one, this isn't representative. 2, not nearly enough people participated. And 3, we just discussed all types of unwanted sexual contact.
And then
I am on this list. I have gone in for a kiss before and been denied. Somebody check that box for me. That's not rape culture. That's just me getting denied. Yeah. It was clearly unwanted.
And that happens sometimes. I mean,
these are the numbers that people are playing with and spreading. I don't want to call it a rumor because the statistic is there.
Right.
It's not made up. But much like the wage gap, it does not mean what people are saying it means.
Okay, yeah.
And all I ask is that anybody coming across these statistics, which you'll learn in stats in the first place if you take the general stats class, 1, take it with a grain of salt, and 2, see what's actually happening. Because the headlines aren't going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Because why would they? Who's going to get that click? It just took me 7 minutes to explain all of that.
Right.
That you can't write that in a headline.
No, yeah, I agree.
So that's that. That's me dispelling the major statistic that gives credence to a quote-unquote rape culture on college campuses.
Right.
There's sexual assault. Yes, it must be stopped. There's rape. Yes. Brock Turner's case was ridiculous and sad, honestly. And in a lot of ways scares me, but not indicative of, yet again, a wider trend.
Okay. I mean, that's the only example I have in my research, so I can't argue with that.
I mean, it's not the only one.
Sure.
I'm not going to say it's the only one. I mean,
the argument can still be made that's not widespread.
I mean, Bureau of Justice estimates 1 in 53, that's about 2%, and there's 150 million women. That's a lot of people and a lot of crime that still needs to be stopped.
Yep.
But it's not an outlier. It's not a pattern of an ignored, overwhelming pattern.
All right, you want to finish it off with the new feminist movement then?
I actually didn't do that much research on this because...
I didn't either, but I think we agree on it.
I mean, I just want to make clear because, like I said before, if you don't say this, you're judged. So, equal rights, we're in agreement.
Absolutely.
And that's the argument isn't against equal rights, but when you say I'm against feminism, you're in their ears, you're saying you're against equal rights. No. I would say me and you, I would say everybody is like a second wave feminist because they had the right to vote, but they were still being forced into these gender roles.
This is the second wave you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, they were allowed to vote, but they still had to be in the kitchen and doing whatever. And obviously that wave came up and
so there it is. There's a third wave of feminism?
This is the third. You could look this up.
Okay.
We're in the third wave feminism, and this is the feminism of microaggressions, safe spaces, and it's a general movement of intersectionality. They call it intersectional feminism.
Okay.
It's sort of like it's a hierarchy of victimhood. Is you can be victimized by being a woman, but if you're black, you're victimized 2 times. If you're a Jew black woman, you're victimized 3 times. And then it's just a whole intersectional thing where you have a hierarchy of victims, and the most victimized is at the top of that list.
So you're saying even if nothing happens, you're still a victim based on who you are.
Right. It is literally cutting up people and dividing them by race and gender, and then telling them each how discriminated against they are.
Yeah, that seems, I don't know, not advantageous whatsoever.
It's kind of scary. But obviously, I mean, there are quote-unquote feminazis, and I think a lot of them are just kidding around. Like, a lot of them just enjoy that they can say, like, kill white men. Well, maybe that might be a little too extreme, but
I hear what you mean, yeah.
It's like, oh, white people, or oh, white dudes, whatever it is. Like, I'm sure I've seen a lot of stuff about manspreading and like mansplaining, but like in the context of those posts, they're just like enjoying that it's even a thing that people are talking about. But the people who actually believe this, it's negative and it's going backwards. All you're doing is, I'll just say it is reverse sexism, and to say that doesn't exist doesn't make no sense. You can't use history just saying, well, women were the ones that were always oppressed. That doesn't mean men can't ever be oppressed.
Right, similar to reverse racism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you're coming to a conclusion and acting on that conclusion about somebody else simply because of their gender, it's sexism. No matter man or woman.
Yeah.
So, do I like the trends that are coming out of the third wave? No, I don't. But that doesn't mean I'm against equal rights. It means I'm against pushing forward and delegitimizing all men for whatever reason.
Right. Okay, I agree with that.
So we can probably make that a whole, like a actual separate topic with facts and graphs and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think
I feel good.
We talked.
We talked for a long time, dude.
We definitely talked. That was the debate.